live stream the meeting. Meeting is now live streaming. "30 seconds, done redirecting. Live stream the meeting." And welcome to live streaming YouTube with Dan Winter, Fractal U, Tufan, and our special guest, Carlos. Oh, it's wonderful there. Click hi. And now we're going to initiate local recording. More. Click record. Hello, record on this computer. Yo, good evening and welcome everyone back to fractalu.com. As you know, I'm Dan Winter, fractalfield.com, fractalu.com, and our co-host, as usual, is Tufan Goofin, who will have announcements in a moment. And our exciting special guest for the evening is Carlos Avila from Barcelona, who is an amazing empath, if I may say myself, and teaches family constellation therapy and some of the very cosmic implications thereof. And we're going to have a fun chat about that. It's very interesting. Carlos's work has been really stellar. He has a group that he operates out of Barcelona called, is it Humane? What do you call it? Humane?
Humind.
Humind. Is
Humind, like human, but finishing with mind. Humind. Yes. And we are in Instagram called We Are Humind in Instagram. Yes.
Yes. And Carlos runs that with his amazing magic, almost shaman lady Fran from South America. They have an amazing family and really an amazing group of people that are regularly healed working with Carlos and Fran. We have stories to tell. It's going to be fun tonight. Thank you for being here, Carlos.
My pleasure.
So let's see. Do we have any fun announcements here? Let's think a moment. Tufan, any announcements for the evening?
Sure. Hi, everyone. So next week, we are going to be talking with Dan Winter about when a charge vortex implodes. Directional coherent longitudinal EMF is projected as gravity. Practical examples of new gravity making technology. So we are going to have a fun conversation next week on fractalu.com. And other than that, our October conference registration process is going full on. And also we have to mention that Carlos, who's our guest tonight, will be speaking at our October conference, October 19 to 24. He will be giving us a lecture about family constellation, as well as a practical workshop. A session directed by Carlos will be done during the conference as well. So thanks for joining us, Carlos. Dan, you can take it.
So Carlos will be leading an experiential. You can have the experience at the October conference. By the way, I think, Tufan, you may misspoke. That was October 9 to 14. Not
That's right. Sorry about that. 9 to 14. Right.
Yes. And the website for that is fractalfield.com/2025, our annual conference. And by the way, the single rooms are almost sold out already. It's amazing. We have a lot of interest.
We have a waiting list.
It's amazing. So please,
if anyone is interested, they can just send an email to info@geometricmodels.org, and we provide all the details about the conference logistics and everything, and can put you on the waiting list for the single rooms. But we have plenty of space with double rooms.
Thank you, Tufan. So big conference coming up. And just one more word then about next week's event at which I'm presenting. You know, we presented that film on how a charged vortex makes gravity. A lot of people want to know how the Vimana Nazi belt flew, and they want it in a very simple language. How can a mercury vortex making a little bit of piezo charge make gravity? What's the picture? How do you understand the serious physics in very simple terms? And that then applies directly to the vortex of your own brainwaves. It's a fun thing. So next week, we're coming up on how a charged vortex makes gravity. So thank you, Tufan. I'm going to remove pin. And now we're getting ready for Carlos's lecture. I was going to do just a little warm-up of why I personally am so excited about what Carlos does. Carlos and I have been best buddies for many years. And
almost 20 years.
Oh, am I that old? Are we that old?
Yes.
You don't look that old. I hope I don't. Okay. Anywho, and Carlos originally was translating events I did in Spain, and amazing. He's very skilled in French, English, and Spanish. He's really skilled in many things, and they have a new place up here in France. And are we having fun? Anywho, so when Carl gets people together, he originally was helping to test, for example, Therify.net plasma, and now hopefully Phi-Ray. where he was able to show quite significantly that the plasma field was very helpful in inducing depth of hypnotic induction for therapy and other things. And now we understand that the depth of implosive plasma induces also lucidity and lucid dreaming and hypnosis. And we understand, we think, the physics of why, because it's that same plasma vortex inside your head. When it gets more centripetal, gets more focused, lucid, crystallized. And at that point, it is possible to sort. And that's the metaphor here, that if you get for example, if you have a family that was a bit dysfunctional, for example, and they're traveling kind of like a plasma field, and you want to gather together that slip knot of all the people in the dysfunctional or functional family and try to recreate the implosive plasma intensity of the emotions of that family in a way that they implode like a vortex, which is to say, they get sorted, because in that convergence, all is sorted. Scott Howard is joining us. How cool. So there's lots of reasons why I was so impressed with Carlos. You know, I can teach the physics, actually, of how plasma as emotion can get centripetal and enables a sorting process. But the skill, and I admire the skill a lot, Carlos is a fabulous empath, in my opinion, and it intuitively can feel so richly and deeply and sensitively how the emotions of the various family members might fit together. And so when he picks out who's going to be what part of which family constellation and recreate that field, and this is beautiful alchemy. I mean, this is a fun story about healing families. So without further ado, I'm super grateful that our wonderful friend Carlos is going to be sharing with us this evening. Carlos, it's all yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your introduction, Dan. And okay, for me, it's been great to know all your physics, Dan, because it was a beautiful way to understand what I was experiencing throughout this 20 years of family constellations practice. To start with, I used to say in the first years I was doing family constellations that I was amazed that certain constellations, they ended up with what I would call that instead of a flat ceiling, the room became a vault. Do you say a vault?
Beautiful, like a dome, like a field.
Exactly, a dome. That's it. And some others didn't. So I was very amazed and interested. First of all, where was this coming from? This sensation of that the energy of the room becoming like a dome.
Beautiful.
Some other ones didn't happen. So later on, I understood that when this dome, this feeling of the energy creating a dome happened was because there was a real connection with the ancestors of energy. Because I've been very interested in during these 20 years in really doing real family constellations, meaning real connection with the ancestors, because it's human mind can very easily interfere with that. So if you use representatives, I mean, I'm going to do an introduction maybe for the people who don't know this kind of work, okay? We work in group, and someone wants to heal something in his family system, and then I ask a few data about his biography in the family, and then I suggest that he chooses someone in the group to represent his family members, either alive or dead. It doesn't matter at all, okay? And then the first surprising thing is that representatives, who are people who most often haven't had any contact with family constellations, with any kind of transpersonal work, they are, let's say, normal people in this sense. Once they are set in the center of the room and told, you represent my father, or you represent my brother, you represent my grandfather, they very easily get into a state of inner connection, of little implosion, we could say, where they start receiving an information Information, what do I mean by information? Not necessarily words, but feelings and the need to move in a certain direction or not. And sometimes they even feel like shaking. They even feel like the legs are trembling. So they get information through the body mainly, not through the mind. That's a very important thing, because if it happens that they have an idea, like, for example, I'm representing the father who was very violent, then the mind will tell them, okay, you have to act as a violent man. And then they start doing more acting than really opening to the information that comes from the family system field. So this for me has been a matter of research, because I didn't want to do family constellations that was a bad acting show. That's been very important, because it's very easy in this kind of transpersonal kind of settings that the human mind becomes very excited. And then emotions come, but emotions that don't have to do with what's real in the family system. They are just steered by the mental of the people who are representing. So it's very important for us people who are facilitators of family constellations to really be very, very paying attention that the people who are being representatives, they are in this little implosive state.
So they're like relaxed, almost in a trance, where they're actually getting the feelings of the person they represent, rather than the abstract ideas.
Exactly, almost in a trance. And it's as if they forget about themselves. They forget about who they are. I always tell them the idea of who you are and what you think about the world, about men, about women, about anything, has to be kept seated down while you stand up and offer yourself as a sensor. You'll be just a sensor. And I ask you to really surrender to that. So then people, they are a little bit disoriented after that. And I say, great, if you feel disoriented, you'll be a good sensor, because you don't have any preconceived idea. And then gradually they start saying, okay, I don't know why, but there's someone behind me, another representative, and I'm sensing that he loves me so much. I can feel the love coming from behind. Or else I feel like walking away. I don't know what I'm doing here. I just want to go away. So they start having this very gradual need to move in a certain direction, or to be moved emotionally in a certain way. And this is the information that I get, so that I can understand what was the deep layer of the family. So there's a superficial layer called the consciousness. Consciousness meaning the ideas of one should behave, and the things that are forbidden to talk about. This is the consciousness. And especially the facts that the family system has decided to repress. So this is what creates the disorders in the deep layer, this consciousness. Because new members, like children that are born in the family, they very unconsciously receive the information that you shouldn't talk about that, you shouldn't feel like that, you should behave this way and not that other way. This is what we call the consciousness. So then when the representatives are in the middle of the room, they receive the information of what had not been expressed in the family system, of all the emotions, and not only the emotions, but the movements, the directions, the connections that were forbidden in the family by the consciousness of the family system. So I get this information. I ask sometimes 1 or 2 sentences to the representatives in order to really know what they're experiencing. And then also I sense the energy in the room, because sometimes there are vortex created by the energy. These vortex are ancestors normally who were disowned, who were denied because of what they did, because of they were ignored. For example, if they died before being born, or if they died a few days after they were born. So the whole family system in their consciousness felt a certain uneasiness when these people or the conversation was close to remembering these people. So they were omitted, they were denied, disowned. So when this happens, what I feel in the room is the vortex, like the energy wants to go there. And then it's as simple as asking another representative, would you please stand up there where I feel the vortex is? And it's a very phenomenological approach, because if the person standing there starts feeling intensity, or I start feeling like a deep activation in me, that means that this vortex, which was a void, has been brought into openness. And what normally happens is that the other members, they are the other representatives are also very moved by this void becoming present. And they start either crying, or they turn around and look at him, and you can sense the emotion. This emotion was kept under the consciousness of the family system. And this emotion is what creates this, maybe Dan, you can help me in that, this feeling that makes the flat room of the flat ceiling of the room to feel like a dome, because it's an emotion that brings harmony to the whole group. It's as if the wave of all the members can start imploding and can start, folding inward in perfect phase conjugation.
Yeah, that's it. It just reminds me so much of when we were in Australia and they talked about it's absolutely critical every day in your dreaming, in your songline work, that the ancestors must be present. This is actually in fact, they don't have a word really for God. The God is ancestor memory. And when the ancestor memory is complete, I think what Carlos is referring to is that completes what he calls the dome, is actually the coherence of the field effect, able to implode and begin to navigate and become steerable. So effectively, the creation of the dome means the collective family memory is now functioning as a self-organizing body with a center and a heart, as it were. And that happens when the vortex implode collectively. So instead of a flat ceiling, you have a dome. It means the plasma has become a torus.
Yes, exactly. Maybe the dome shape is a torus then, of course.
In other words, if the field effect is flat or square, it's not going to be that self-organizing. In order to be self-organizing, it needs to be toroidal and implosive and more dome-like, I would think. And it's a way of talking about the fact that literally the collective intelligence is plasma, for sure. Ancestor memory is plasma. It's the physics of what lucid dreaming is made of. And to assemble that till it's a collective, functional, navigable, self-aware, living body collectively, that family has to constellate. That's the point. But by being so intuitive, Carlos tweaks that so it begins to implode and self-organize, I suppose.
Yeah. And also, it's good to talk about the heart, because in order to facilitate family constellations, it's very important that the person who is energetically in the center of the family constellation, which is a facilitator, needs to have a presence as empty as possible. If there is any intention of really doing good, then the mental gets activated and there's no depth in the work. So maybe the most difficult part, it's the same thing with healing in a way. Like healers, also would agree with me that you really have to be in a state of void in order for the information to come to you and from you to the representatives. If the person leading the group wants to have a happy end, maybe you'll reach a happy end, but it will be totally superficial, and it won't affect the soul of the family. And this is very important. It's as if the heart, in its state of full coherence, becomes the fractal antenna that turns inward, not away from the world, but towards the center and the source of the pattern in the system.
Which it's kind of like ability to self-refer, which is the origin of consciousness itself, the ability to turn inside out. And so they have to feel the feelings at the center of the family heart, the family core. And by not running from the pain, but instead being in the presence of where the pain was, which introduces us to the idea of how the pain is sorted.
Yeah. In a way, this attitude of, I call it 0 point, meaning neutrality, is the most difficult thing to achieve.
Yeah. And just maybe even there might be an example or two of major issues that you've been able to help family groups sort in this way, an instructive example where someone comes to you and there's a major family problem around one person or one event, and how that got sorted by this constellation.
Of course. Yes. One that affected me very much, that I was very impressed, was one with two brothers that they were born in Germany or in Poland, and they were Jewish. And when the Nazis started trying to catch their parents, the parents passed them to uncles, and uncles could flee, but to different countries. One uncles went to Argentina, and the other went somewhere, but ended up in Israel. So these two brothers, that they were separated when they were very young, never talked to each other since then.
Wow. And
then one of them came to the workshop and opened up this issue. And we did a family constellation where there was the parents, the two of them, and the Nazi troops that killed the parents. So in a way, we set a scenario where the origin of the pain would be present. And it was very beautiful because in the beginning, the representatives of the prosecutors, of the violent people, were very, very arrogant, and they looked like they looked down upon these poor other people who were the victims. It doesn't matter who they were historically, just the dynamics. And it took quite a long time, maybe 15 minutes, because the movement of the soul of the family is very slow. It took around 10 minutes, and gradually, by looking into each other's eyes, the energy that was created forced the violent people, the arrogant killers, to gradually feeling weak, whereas the other ones started standing up and really regaining dignity.
Wow.
So it ended up with the other people, the violent people, kneeling down and bowing in front of the other ones who stood up and owned their dignity. This movement happened very slowly,
Wow.
And for me, it's probably because this is what's going to happen once we leave the body. Because in our physical body, we have an identification, with a political cause, so we give ourselves reasons to be cruel. And we've been convinced that we are doing the right thing and we're doing it for our people, being cruel and killing. But once we leave the physical body, this point of view disappears and just stays the energy of the fact. So, according to my point of view, what happens is that in the beginning of the constellation is the historical issue. But gradually, as the soul energy takes over, we can anticipate what will happen up there in other dimensions without a physical body. We can see it happening before our eyes. And this is so amazingly beautiful.
Wow.
It's a beauty that it's moving to the marrow of the bone.
Yes. There's something beautiful about the soul energy of the family moves slowly. It's like the collective fusion evolves, but then there's a presence of the fusion itself or something. It's a beautiful idea.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And what is really important in family constellations is doing it from a point, from an attitude of not knowing.
Yes. No prejudice. You have to be relaxed and centered and just let the field make its own decisions, I suppose. But in that magic moment, so what happened with the brothers? I mean, was there a happily ever after or?
Thank you. Okay. After the end of the constellation was they ended up hugging each other. The killers and the victims, they ended up uniting. Okay.
Wow.
And what happened is that I saw this one of the brothers, the one that came. I saw him 2 weeks later, and I said, "Oh, how are you doing?" And he started being very moved. He was quite an old man. He was around his 50, 60 years old. And he started sobbing and crying, and he couldn't stop.
Really?
And so I waited, and after a while, he could tell me, "You wouldn't believe it. You won't believe it. Last week, my brother just called as if we had talked to each other 1 month ago."
Wow.
I happened to have a conference in Paris, but I was wondering that I could pass by Barcelona to be with you for a while, and then go to my conference. And he said it was unbelievable because he was talking to me as if he had been in touch with me all my life. So very often, brothers and sisters, if they experience something too painful when they are together, they decide to split up in order for this pain not to be reactivated. Okay.
But somehow it activated a kind of telepathic radio between the brothers when the constellation happened.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's rich, Yeah, it's like the other brother who wasn't there actually indirectly must have felt something.
Of course, yes.
Yes.
And I mean, this is almost something quite usual working with family constellations in workshops and even in individual sessions. Because once, since I have this 20 years of training in family constellations, I have in individual sessions have the total confidence that when we talk about the ancestors of the person sitting in front of me, we are in touch with the ancestors.
Which is like multi-generational, like a cocoon that's embedded donut within donut or something.
Totally.
Yes.
Anna is asking a question about this. Sorry to cut you off.
No, go
Would
ahead.
it be okay to say, that this practice is like time travel, going to a past event and freezing the situation and rewriting it, or rather rewriting the emotions and freeing the pain?
Um,
In other words, Carlos, they say that, if you were emotionally wounded as a child, as an adult, you can go back and find that child, recreate the emotion of that moment, and heal that child from your adult self to your child self. One example.
yeah. The image I use is that if, for example, I have someone in front of me and I hit the the shoulder of the person, and the person is shocked. Either the person is about to run away or to hit me back, okay? And I tell the person, wait 1 second, please, stop 1 second, just a second. And then I show a spider, a tarantula, uh, a poisonous spider on the shoulder of the person. So the second the person understands and sees the cause of my action, the whole energy changes, and instead of the emotion of pain becomes another emotion. So the energy is transformed immediately. So when we do a family constellation, someone can be hurt, can have maybe the person is being mistreated, abused, whatever. But once we open the field and we start seeing what's behind the fact, there's always the understanding of what happened, and the emotion of pain, of frustration, of fear very often switches, changes.
And also to mention, part of Anna's question was the concept of, does it imply a kind of time travel? And there's always people who talk about the physics of time travel often talk about the fact that wherever there was a strong emotion, it leaves kind of a ripple or wrinkle in time, which means there's a shadow that then can be addressed from any distance. So strong emotions can be levers across timelines.
Yes. Time travel, the way I see it is, I'm sure that in our chest, we have the heart, which is kind of a portal.
Yes, yes.
And in this portal, we can access a place where everything is beyond time. So it's not that there's a time travel, it's that we go to this place where time is not everything is together, so we don't need time to go from one place to another. Everything is there. Kind of this implicit order in Bohm terms.
Implicate order, yes, boom. And another way of thinking about that, I've often taught that time is just a name for the experience of relative spin rate. And when people say things are timeless in physics, some first scratches your head. But ultimately, what we're saying is where there's a place where all spins converge and communicate. And we now know that when physics says entanglement is how you do action at a distance, we say the climax form of entanglement is called phase conjugation, that fusion, implosion, and that is that ultimate connectivity. And when we say timeless, it means that all event histories can converge where all spins implode, and that's the fusion point.
So for me, it's not time travel, it's just accessing this place, is sinking into the heart.
Which a fusion kind of thing as well. And
Yes.
The heart is the place. Yep, absolutely, yes. And you're so good at feeling that. And that's also, we could talk about, I suppose, where the sorting happens in a certain way.
What sorting?
The sorting of pain, or where the pain is forgiven and suddenly becomes oneness or something,
Huh?
The idea is that when we say haven't got time for the pain, what it means is that when you're afraid to look at the pain, it means that you do armoring, what's called in autism, and you create a separation from the pain, which is actually a separation from feeling. Whereas if you permit yourself to feel the pain, which is actually where the fractality was bleeding, then suddenly just inhabiting the center of that feeling creates the fusion effect. And that's the end of the pain, actually, because pain is only a name for the charge that bleeded due to broken fractality in that sense.
Sometimes I also trained as a core energetics, which core energetics is a kind of bioenergetic work, okay? I mean, this maybe you've heard of Lowen and Pierrakos. They were disciples of Wilhelm Reich. Well, so sometimes if the person who asks for the constellation is really armored, as you say, Dan, instead of choosing a representative for the person, I ask the person to jump into the constellation. And I work bioenergetically in the constellation so that the person can let the energy of harmony that is created into the system, into his or her system. Because otherwise, the armor is saying, no, 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 I'm too afraid. I cannot let all this love come in.
Yeah, I cannot feel, basically. It's a might parallel here that a lot of people believe in many, not all cases of autism, it's related to armoring due to deep trauma, particularly when very young. And so the child puts up this armor, this barrier from pain, and that's why they can't hear or speak, or the autism story. But then that would also perhaps imply that maybe you have some stories about autism solution in family constellation also, or what do you?
When you say autism, what comes to my mind is normally kids, children that have been conceived artificially. Not always, but sometimes I think we are not careful enough about the soul of these beings. And it can be either this or else when parents really are not coherent enough as a couple to really create the nest where this baby can nest properly.
Yeah. So the intensity of the fusion, for example, of the orgasm or the lack of orgasm in artificial insemination, or anything that prevents a fusion experience, and rebirthing is another example where the birth canal itself is actually supposed to be a fusion device. That's an implosion effect. And all of that creates the implosive fusion we call physicsofsoul.com, which is how the plasma communes to a point where it's implosive and connected, as it were, through the sun to the heart of the stars. And all of that connectivity is lost due to trauma, or as Carlos mentions, a connection to artificial insemination, actually. And so we need to know a lot more about physicsofsoul.com to understand these things like autism, where the disconnection, the thread doesn't go through the center.
Yes. I mean, this is a very delicate issue. So now there's every time more and more children that are conceived this way, and we don't want to condition them. But I think we as a society, we have the responsibility to really do some research about which are the consequences, not only for the physical part of a human being, but also for the soul. And otherwise, we are responsible for that.
That's right. So, but the fact that Carlos noticed a connection between things like artificial insemination versus autism is very strong indication here that there's something we need to be teaching about physics of soul, right? Is the point. Yes. And we have this physicsofsoul.com project, which, see, now our physicsofsoul.com project, just a short review, started when we noted that the frequency signature, which is implosive, which causes lucid dreaming, ultimately fits the equation, which is implosive conjugation, which is related to why phi ray and therapy and other devices help trigger lucid dreaming. That's replicable. It happens. And obviously, there's many people who agree that ability to lucid dream is a pretty good indication that you're going to take memory through death, hence physics of soul. Now, what does that mean? It means that you, during the compression event of bliss, and plasma that triggers lucid dreaming. That implosive compression at the DNA braiding recursively, presence of bliss, embeds the DNA into the array, propagating coherent longitudinal. So what we're saying is the Ba from the Ka, or physics of soul, or the Kesjan body, or rainbow light body, is actually measurable physics of onset longitudinal coherence, enable you to propagate into that array called ancestor memory and described in detail in physics by aboriginals, actually. So we can talk, I'm an electrical engineer who talks a lot about physics of soul. And so this fits now what Carlos is bringing up, that he's noticing that we need to understand soul and in order to understand the dissociation related to autism, et cetera. It's a deep and important subject. And eventually it's going to be what helps us know the difference between us and AI, for example.
Definitely. Yeah. For example, there's this constellation that I facilitated, which I mentioned in Fulla, but I'll do it briefly now because it's for me, it's very clear how we really need to be in energetic relationship with the source of our genetics. Very simply, very simple. It was a couple that asked me to do a constellation for her daughter, 30 years old. And they told me that she was only the daughter of the woman, and the woman went to get some sperm because the man couldn't because of his kidney. So, and the daughter didn't know it. So I told them, okay, maybe that's the reason she's completely out of center. You'll see it in a constellation. And they said, okay, nobody has to know anything. I said, okay, we'll keep it secret. And it works perfectly. So in the constellation, it was very clear that representatives, not knowing anything about this secret, the daughter, the representative of the daughter, started walking away from the parents towards a corner, and there was a vortex there. So I asked a man in the group, please, can you please stand up there in that corner of the room? And as soon as she saw him, she started not only smiling, she started becoming brighter and brighter. Her aura started becoming bigger and bigger. So finally, she approached the man and very shy, but she asked for permission to hug him. And I asked the man, how are you feeling? He said, okay, I'm feeling fine because she's very kind to me, but I don't know what I'm doing here. He was representing, of course, the donor of the semen.
The origin of the seed, the sperm, actually.
Yes. Yes. And the father started, not the biological father, the other one started feeling very, very angry because it's as if he was ignored or whatever. Okay, so for me, the key point is that the representative of the daughter felt that in the field it was important to go and honor, the source of her genetics.
She was seeking that vortex to reconnect and therefore find soul in a way.
Totally. Totally.
Yes. And so the sperm of the donor father was actually present in the family constellation critically to be the vortex anchor.
Absolutely.
Yes. It shows that the physics of soul is a coherence that comes through the vortex and the DNA as well. But go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
No, that coincidentally, the law has started to acknowledge this fact somehow. I don't know, maybe synchronically, but now it's a requirement that donors must accept that when the person is 18 years old, has the right to know.
Aha. That's good. So the law is saying that the ultimate child has a right to know where the seed came from.
I've been told that. I have to check it legally, but I've been told by two people, different people, that this is so right now.
That's interesting. That's rich. So we're actually coming to grips with physics of soul in some ways.
Totally. Exactly. Yeah.
The soul is where the vortex actually communes with center, and which some would say source or God or the divine, perfectly branched, so many words, but it's a biological imperative.
Mhm. And one of the basic laws in order, we call order, in a family constellation is that all the members have to be acknowledged.
Uh-huh.
Why is that so? Because if a member is ignored, either because of pain, it's too painful to remember him,
Mhm.
the oldest brother that died the second day he was born, it's too painful. So, or else because of shame, we don't talk about that uncle that did that awful thing. Or sometimes just because of ignorance, uh, a,
That's
a baby dies and then we put the same name to the next one and we don't care.
Yeah, that's why indigenous peoples and aboriginals, they're always honoring and acknowledging every ancestor
Absolutely.
sequentially, inclusively. It's beautiful, important. Carlos, so just a couple fun little questions.
One thing then, let me add one thing to
Sure,
that, because why is it so important? Because if we don't do it, this void that is created attracts the destiny of a descendant.
Descendant, all right.
Descendant. So this descendant starts feeling the need to follow that ancestor in his destiny. Either if he ended up very poor, the descendant doesn't know why, but walks towards poverty. If he died, of an accident, the descendant starts, suffering accidents. It's what we call blind love. It's a way of loving, being attracted by the black hole created by this ancestor who is ignored, and we want to free the descendant from this destiny, which is not his destiny.
So it's like when you have an unacknowledged ancestor, it leaves a missing vortex that others get sucked into, the descendant.
That's it. Yes.
Interesting. That could be that could be plasma physics as well as folklore. It's actual connections to a vortex. And that when you leave one open, fascinating. This could become a bigger subject of the astral hygiene of ancestral memory as well, Yes. So when you acknowledge all ancestors like the four directions, how beautiful. And that you made these observations, Carlos. I find it beautiful, really. I'm grateful, impressed. So we do just these two little questions here. Anna was asking, is the main person participating in the session, or the subject, is the subject of the family constellation actually participating in the constellation, or just being an observer? That was one question.
Great question. Thank you, because that helps me to clarify. It can be both ways. Either I ask the person who asks for the constellation to choose a representative, and the person stays as an observer. But sometimes it's better than the person jumps into the constellation representing herself or himself. It depends on the person. I mean, this is the intuition. Once you are leading or facilitating a constellation, there's also some information that comes to you and makes you do certain things that you cannot justify at the moment, but you feel it very clearly. You have no doubt.
All I can think of is Shakespeare saying, the play is the thing in which will capture the conscience of the thing. Well, the constellation is the play, and it captures the collective conscious, and that steers the big tornado.
Wow.
And the other question from Aaron here, Tufan, I'm reading the questions. I hope it's okay.
Go ahead.
So Aaron asks, are there specific roles within families that are better at connecting with their ancestors than others? For example, are the daughter's mother's grandmothers more sensitive than the son's father's grandfathers, or vice versa?
Can you read more slowly, please?
In other words, are there some kinds of roles within the family constellation that are better at connecting with ancestors? For example, the feminine side versus the masculine, etc.
I don't think so. No, it's never been my experience.
Mhm. But the issue of being able to connect with ancestors is something new to many people, I suppose.
It is, of course. That's why it's so. Um, at the beginning, it's scaring somehow, but once they get used to it, it's they want to do it over and over. Sometimes
Yeah.
people, I ask them not to come to constellations anymore because it's as if let's say the danger is that they feel so nourished by the connection with ancestors that they forget about nourishing themselves in their everyday life.
It's almost addictive. Well, the ancestors is, I mean, that was ancestor memory is essentially Aboriginal name for the divine or God, you know.
Mhm.
It's the life stream, really. It's so the ancestor memories. It reminds me of why in ancient Celtic, the grandparents were supposed to be, if they were present at the moment of conception, it would increase the soul force.
Yes.
So
Mhm.
it's really a firm embedding in the, it's a very biologically plasma implosive, real thing, this physics of soul.
Mm.
And and that you can see that with the feeling of a dome forms when the ancestors join. That's cool.
And sometimes, a few times though, but sometimes I've heard a chorus. It's as if the energy, when it becomes implosive and it's so beautiful, there's such a feeling of love, then I hear a chorus, like chorus singing, you know?
Wow. Wow. It's like the climax of a real Greek play where the chorus comes in.
Yes, yes. Mhm.
So you're actually hearing this, the singing of the ancestors as a way.
Very, very sweet singing, but chorus, many, many voices together, very much together. Mhm.
Wow.
For me, this is the sign that, well, that person has been given a present, you know, which is
Wow.
the total implosion and healing of his family system. Because some constellations cannot reach this place.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Mhm.
it's a gift, really.
It's a gift.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and we've talked for years. You know, Valerie is so sensitive to the ringing in her ear that she can tell which ancestor is phoning by how which ear is ringing. And we've talked a lot about the piezoelectric ringing in the ear from the Kundalini Bliss biophysics
Mhm.
phonon of the ringing of the heart and implosion in the blood and heart coherence. And so the ringing in the ear, actually, which we now know the physics, a lot of that, it's actually the ventricle liquid horns phonon crystallizing. But the ringing in the ear, it was called the song in the blood, the Sangreal, actually ancestor memory. And suddenly this takes on serious physics.
Mhm. Yeah. Are there,
And
you said there were two questions, huh?
yes,
Yep.
we have two questions. First one from Anna. She asks if there's a protocol to open and close the session.
Well, the protocol to open it is that the person sits by my side, the person who wants to do his or her constellation, and then I wait till I do the connection with the person. And this connection means that I start feeling the person in her totality. Mhm.
Empathy. The,
Empathy.
the empath, it's the same name for the time, who can steer the time chair at Montauk, the empath.
Yeah. I mean, it took me years to really have the confidence in the work to really not knowing. But
Yeah.
once I don't know, I can just sit there and wait and feel my aura, including the person,
Mhm.
and asking for the images of what the soul of the person wants to happen and the soul of the family system wants to happen. But
Mhm.
really, I don't know. And then I ask sometimes very precise questions like, how many of you were born in the family? Has someone who has died out of a natural process, too early or by accident? And but there's always something guiding the questions, And when the bell rings, meaning, oh, there's something here, then I ask the person to choose representatives for the members involved in that fact. Sometimes if the people ask for issues like health issues, and it's also possible to do a constellation with the different organs of the body.
Oh, fascinating.
You can see the relationship of the organs and see how they help each other. And which organ is weak and how the other organs start cooperating in helping the person.
You be my liver today. Oh, the liver's in pain.
Yeah. Or what? So cool. In the end, what happens is that the organ that is weak or in pain very often ends up being in relationship with something in the family system.
Oh, I see. So the family system is very directly connected to which?
Very directly connected, yes.
Where the pain is. Oh, that's rich. Yeah. Wow. Oh, that's beautiful. Carlos, did you want to say more? Tufan has another question, but are you finished with that one? Carlos, are you finished with it?
Yes, I'm finished with this one. I was going to say something that I don't want to forget, which is that for me, family constellation is not only a way of solving problems, conflicts, or healing, but a way of educating people. Educating people, meaning to help them realize the power they already have to go into the hearts and to make a deep connection, which is a communication with all members they have a bond with, either they are alive or dead. And if they start playing as if it was true, they end up having confirmation, either through a dream, if it's someone who's dead, or either through new attitudes that this person they have the bond with shows towards them.
Say again, as if it were true?
As if it were true. So they start, for example, they have a conflict with a brother, okay? And they close their eyes and I guide them to go down into the heart, into the scenario of the heart, and then they call the presence of the brother. And then I ask them to look into the brother's eyes, and I can sense if they do real connection or not by what I feel in my body. But once they make connection, because I feel the energy of I am moved as well, then I ask them to talk to this brother and to wait and see either what they need to tell or what the brother needs to tell them. And then they say, I don't know why, but my brother is smiling and says, I am sorry. Or the brother says, I am open. So they start receiving the information from the depth of the person themselves and the other person as well. And if they end up having this making up or this piece together, we finish the session, and quite often, after a while, they tell me, the other day, my brother came and he said hello for the first time, whatever. So it's a very beautiful and practical way to check that we really have this capacity. Yes. So that's why I say that everybody in a relationship is 100% responsible for the relationship. It's not 50-50. No.
It's like when they saw it through the heart that they got the center of the vortex and the connection is made somehow. Yes, which is a beautiful thing. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. So second question is from Scott. He says, I have heard the trumpets from the next dimension before. A very moving experience. Our question is, if someone finds out that certain ancestors of theirs were unethical, violent, etc., could it ever be detrimental for that person to learn this?
Oh, I didn't get it.
In other words, if a person were to find out that some of their ancestors were actually kind of big trouble or, violent. Is it better that they never learn that, or?
No. It's always important to learn that, of
Mhm,
course. Mm.
mhm. So
Why? Because they are under the effect of the fact.
yeah, well said. Well said. So if they should always, in other words, is when you're saying I don't have time for the pain, you also are saying I don't have time for the truth.
Of course, yes. Yes.
Healing requires learning.
Yeah. I love it that Scott's speaking about hearing the trumpets from the next dimension. The trumpets are actually, there's a deep ringing resonance when your DNA rings from its core, your heart rings from its core. It is a kind of trumpet. There's all the spiritual implications, but this is real living plasma in this vortex. It's the ringing in your ears. It's a sangreal. It's a song in the blood. It's the physics of bliss. These stories fit together beautifully to the romance, and the spirituality fits the physics. And Carl, the beauty about Carlos is his ability to sit sensitively and feel, to find the center of the vortex and pick up the thread. That's what I admire about Carlos.
And one thing for me is very important is that family constellations, for me, it's a way of freeing the person from the blind love. Blind love meaning I will follow you, granddad, or I will follow you, my uncle, in your destiny, because the family system is ignoring you and is putting you down. So without me being aware of it, I will do the same thing you did.
Oh. So
This
it's
is
like you're freed from the bonds when everyone is acknowledged. When the memory comes to the surface, then the bonds are freed. You can follow your own destiny somehow.
exactly.
Mhm.
For example, if a very simple example, a mother tells his son, I'm so glad you're not a drunkard like your father.
Ugh.
What happens? That the son has the information of this father in his cells. He has a deep bond with this man, whatever, no matter how he was, what he did. And if the mother says you are better than your father by not being a drunkard, he's creating a very deep tendency in that son to join his father.
Oh,
How do you think he will do it?
yes. So
Every
then,
time he raises his glass of beer, whatever, of gin tonic, he says, hey, Dad, this is for you. Gluck.
Conditioning.
So
yeah.
most likely he'll end up drinking like his father. It's a way of honoring him.
So the mother sends the boy off on the opposite path by insulting the father, basically.
Exactly. And she creates the opposite movement in the soul of the son.
Oh,
So it's very interesting in family constellations that the good intentions we have on the surface create the opposite movement deep at the soul level.
but so how would you address that in a constellation then, for example?
In a constellation, first of all, would be opening up the family system of the father,
Um,
and see what was the pain he was trying to hide by drinking, or else who was he following as well by drinking.
I see. So the deep cause of the father's issue, if the son feels the deep cause, then it's sorted, and then yes, then the tendency to follow the father's problem is if the deep cause. So it's basically finding the deep cause of the pain in the first place, sort of thing again.
And if this happens, is great. Very often, for example, it can be something like, he lost his oldest brother when he was 14 because he had an accident or whatever. Or he was beaten by his own father. And then we put a representative for the grandfather.
Yes. And so the dominoes stop falling in the cascade.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not always necessary to reach the place where the origin is, because just by opening up the perspective, the son is already, we help him to not to be under the effect of this blind love, just by watching the representative, for example, of the grandfather suffering. He becomes moved, but he's seeing it. Once he sees it, he doesn't have to follow the destiny of that man.
Once he learns to feel where the pain came from in the grandfather.
Exactly.
Yes, yes, beautiful.
The act of being in an emotional state, in an intense emotional state, is healing.
To actually feel it deeply, as it were.
Yes, feeling deeply and see it through a representative. But for the unconscious, there's not as if. It's really that's his grandfather, and he's seeing the pain.
Seeing the pain, yes, yes. That's so beautiful that you can sort that. Russ has had his hand raised a bit here. Shall we, Russ?
Yes. Yes. So I have a question. I've actually had an experience that I would like to share, and I just want to get your input on it. So throughout my life, I had this one reoccurring style of dream. It was basically I would be in a certain house, and I'd be going to the house, and I never correlated these dreams until one year when I was in my early 20s.
Okay.
I get into this house where I'm like, this time I'm walking out of a house and I'm walking up a hill, and I look to my left and I see all these houses that were white and with a blue roof. And while I'm walking up the hill, I know, or I understand, I'm walking towards the house of a demon, of a devil, like of a very, very powerful being. And I'm walking up this hill to this house, and when I look to my left and I see all the white houses with the blue roofs, this made me realize that every year I have been having a reoccurrent dream of me being in different houses, which represent every ancestor, every relative in my family. I have a pretty big family. So my father being the breadwinner in the family, he had the biggest house. His house was like, you walk in, it's beautiful, all the amenities, and then this huge warehouse. So it kind of represented that his abundance. Then another house would be my mother's house, where it was more loving. It's however my filter perceived it. But I only realized that I've been having a reoccurring dream that moment when I was going to that the devil's house. And I got to the devil's house. I walked in, and it was creepy. It was, all the lights off, very mystical. And I proceeded to find this being, and I ended up grabbing him, and he ran from me. He shifted in the next dimension, and I didn't have the skill set at that time because I was just getting into, well, not just getting into it. I was already pretty much a couple of years into expanding my consciousness, but I didn't know, like, I felt the being was around, but he ran from me. And I started laughing, and I realized that I'm the first person in my family to see this being, and I don't know what that is.
It was a family demon?
What my intuition is saying, it was my father as being like a politician and being pretty, wealthy. I would say that's what it's from, but I don't know. That's why I'm kind of asking right now. What would you say that is?
To tell the truth, this is a little bit beyond my field.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I could help you, Ruslan.
Yeah, just curious, because like if you've heard anything about that, like, because for every person in my family, they all had like their own house, and it was on this beach of like, I was just curious how that all correlates.
Russ has a very powerful family, Odessa, and deep into Ukraine collective family. And this is a deep one. In fact, this brings up, Carlos, eventually we could do family constellations among nations' souls.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
It could be so powerful. Interesting. Well, Russ, thank you for something deep there. Let's say we're going to dream on that together, Russ. Thank you.
Yeah.
Tufan, do you want to read Joseph's question, maybe?
Sure. Joseph asks, when Carlos said that he needs to clear out everything before connecting to the other person and have no intention so that he can see clear with no conditioning wound, that be to create a 90-degree angle to the other person?
Very much so, yes. Mhm.
So in other words, when you get still inside and very open and no prejudice, then you can see accurately, and that gives you an angle, a perception, like conjugate, to feel their
Yes.
feeling.
But by this 90%, 90-degree angle, I don't know if the physics is like this, but it's a way I use to refer to the fact that I'm bypassing the conceptual mind.
Mhm. Yeah.
The conceptual mind would be, okay, this person is so and so, I perceive that. That makes me think of that diagnosis. That diagnosis, either in her personality or else in her family system. Probably this is what's happening, you know. And all this, I hear it happening, but if it happens like this, horizontal, what I try to do is maybe to go like this and just sit passing through. That's why I also call it 90 degrees angle, but I don't know if it applies to physics or not. It's just a way of learn, and it's a metaphor almost.
In the sense that becoming totally relaxed and passive and not knowing and just simply opening yourself and waiting, when you say it makes you transparent to, it makes you a clear channel, enables that vortex to go perpendicular and conjugate, as it were.
Something like that, yes. Mm.
It's beautifully. I'm really struck, moving back to Russ's question a little bit. I'm really struck by the fact that actually, if we got ambitious sometime, we could test whether we can do a family constellation of nations' wars. I mean, imagine if you got people to represent it, the major trauma of in Russ's case, it's, Ukraine versus Russia. He's from Odessa. You could actually do family constellation to heal national wars if this was done well.
I think so, yes.
Now,
And
that's an amazing thought, isn't it?
it's been done.
That would be beautiful. For me, like in my mother has a Slavic type of, I guess you could say, what I've heard recently, that the war that's been happening is the pagan versus the Zionist, right? So my father does have the Jewish bloodline in him, and my mother does have the Slavic, Russian. So I've always been, some ancestors have told me, like, you are healing many bloodline, like many timelines with your tears. So like that's something that's always been running.
Wow. Wow. So in a way, the two sides of your ancestry could be part of those who stand up in the family constellation for that war between nations. And then they could speak the pain of hundreds of years of both sides of the story, And when we actually hear both sides of a story with enough tears, that's when it's healed. When you're listening to both sides of the story and crying for both sides, that is the moment of fusion, actually.
And that's actually I mean, I guess, yeah, I'll say it. So when I was younger, when I was about 8 or 9 years old, I heard my mother and my stepfather just really getting into it, like a huge argument. It had me very scared and emotional, so emotional. And I just tensed up and my hands lit up, like just lit up. And right now, with how emotional I'm getting with, like, I want to go home. Like, you can hear it in my voice, like, so
Yeah.
I'm kind of seeing a correlation in terms of, like, right now, calling all our just our beings. I'm putting it out there, like, we
Calling
need,
all
what's that?
calling all ancestors.
Yeah, like it's go time. I'm doing this. Like, I'm
Get
not going
those
to live
ancestors.
in a realm or a dimension where everybody's just shut off and doesn't have, balance. I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't approve of it. And if I am a part of this, how I've seen it, if I am the Anu, then it's go time. That's
Yeah.
what it is.
So we could do the family constellation where we could all weep for both sides of the story, and the voices could be within your family.
Yes.
Go ahead, Carlos. When you said it had been done to do a family constellation for a nation or a war.
Yes, Bert Hellinger, who is the man who created that family constellation work and developed it. I saw him once doing in a workshop of not a family, but a state constellation with the Palestinian problem.
Uh-huh.
And also another one with the Chilean conflict.
Uh-huh.
With people who were killed and who were kidnapped by
Yes,
the Pinochet people.
I see. Yes, which is your well, Fran is from
Chile.
yes, so that's some in your family too. But do you have any memory of the pieces of the story if one did a family constellation of the Palestinians versus?
Not really, not really. No.
You can imagine, and of course, since that pain goes back so many generations, that's a papal quest in this sense. I mean, if the Pope is right, we are all a family, then we need a big family constellation here, guys.
Yeah, I mean, the aim of the constellation always is bringing unity.
Yes,
And
yes.
for example, what we are experiencing right now is that what one people suffered,
Yep.
they've been inflicting it on another people.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that's painful because that's a human story. I mean, we
Yes.
receive one hit here, and then we in order not to feel so much pain, we do it to somebody else the other side.
Yeah.
And family constellation is a way to really finish that, because we aim unity. Like, for example, the constellation I shared about these parents that were killed by Nazi troops.
Yes.
We ended up at a soul level uniting.
Yes.
That was very healing for the brothers, very healing for the family. And if we could do that at a big level, it would be a way to finish wars.
Yes. If we found the people who had felt the worst of the pain for one side, and then the people had felt the worst of the pain for the other side, and then they talked deeply from the heart, and then there would be time for the pain.
Oh, maybe not so, Dan, because these two people would feel compassion for each other with no need for family constellation, because they understand each other's pain. But it would be bringing in a constellation always the perpetrators of violence and the victims.
Uh-huh.
Why? Because on the surface, they hate each other, or they fear. One fears, the other hates. But once they have representatives gradually start receiving the energy of the soul of the system. And that is what makes them get closer, closer, closer. And the ones that were arrogant become humble. The ones that were down, that were killed or tortured, then they get their dignity back and they stand up. But not against the other one. They stand up with open arms.
It really brings to home the idea of the physics that we are all one. Ultimately, there's a fusion effect in the blood, and until we feel the other as if they're ourselves, we can't fuse. Yeah,
that's the beauty. I remember once in a workshop with Bert Hellinger that in the break I just couldn't help. I go towards him and he said, "Mr. Hellinger, what you do is so beautiful." That's the only words I could say. Because it was beautiful in the sense of there was so much love and harmony and reconciliation happening in front of our eyes. And that's the effect of this this other, how can I say, it's as if once we create this implosive condition, there's some energy coming in from another place that is unified.
A fusion. Yes, yes. Beautiful. That's so beautiful. Carlos, this is one of the reasons I've always admired your work. I just feel it's so central.
One question, Carlos.
Yes.
Is family constellation something applicable to concepts like archetypes or ET races or other entities other than human beings to resolve issues, conflicts? What do you think?
We could resolve ET history.
As I said, family constellations is a phenomenological process, so we should try.
Yeah, it's about living plasma bodies. If you establish representatives of the living plasma body that come alive, and the hologram comes alive, then suddenly they can fuse. It's real physics.
My belief is that it can work exactly the same.
We could do this on a large scale. Very, very interesting and powerful. We need to find the right representatives. And
well, if now we'll have plenty of representatives in October.
yes, so maybe we do an experiment in national reconciliation.
Right. Interesting idea.
Yes.
Well, fun idea. Well, they're so fabulous and powerful and useful to be continued. Carlos, do you want to summarize where your work is now? So you have this group HuMind, and you have a clinic in Barcelona, and current projects and how to reach you, for example?
Yes, pleasure. Right now, this HuMind project is about helping or facilitating that more and more people they get in touch with the energy dimension. Meaning, I mean, I use symbolic ways that the horizontal for me starts with the conception, and there's time, it goes through time, the horizontal, and but horizontal, we are in a material world and we are objects alive, some of them, and there's a space and we are in a big space, but this is the source of conflict and friction. So once we start creating this vertical axis through implosion, for me, implosion is the way of opening this vertical axis, then we can be in this world, but not belonging to this world, and we can be open to the perception of energy, meaning information from a higher dimension where there's no conflict. And HuMind is what is doing right now is a program called Superception, like super perception. We just teach people just to sense energy, feeling it, and also helping them to take decisions, asking energy, not asking what they think or all the information they've got in their brains. Because we have checked and we know that the body receives much more information from a big field than the information we have in our mind, because the information we have in our mind can only be applied to certain things, and it's not alive. Whereas the energy always bring information that is proper and alive at the very moment. So that's what we're doing with HuMind.
I love the concept of going vertical. The Elohim was always making the L or a phase shift, and we say from the transverse to the coherent longitudinal, which is how you propagate in the lucid dream, become shamanic, etc. So if you propagate a coherent longitudinal, make the L or phase shift, that's what we call physics of soul. Also, it all fits together beautifully.
Yeah. For me, the cross is a very important symbol, not as a Christian symbol exclusively.
Yes.
Cross is how we are built energetically, and the heart is in the middle of the cross, and that's where we can go through the heart and implode and be in touch with other dimensions. I mean, it's plenty of things that I learned as my Christian teaching. Suddenly, they become such a big truths with all your learnings then.
The sacred four directions, four-wave mixing, conjugation,
Yes,
how
definitely.
ancestors used it. It all fits together, yes. And so did you want to mention a website or how to contact you? Anything in closing? Or
Yes, the website, we are doing a new one because the other one was too small already, but everybody can reach us at Instagram. We are HuMind. HuMind is HuMind.
right. And we did put that link, carlosavila.com, at the Fractal U as well, and maybe links there as well, yes? So we can't be grateful or enthusiastic enough about what Carlos is doing. He really has taken, the emotional theory of what we've been working on for years here and put it into practice. And so everyone's invited to stay in touch with Carl, and we'll have more from Carl. We should do more work on national and unity of family constellations.
That for Fulya, then, that will be the ideal place. We have a very big room, plenty of volunteers to represent, and we'll have lots of fun there.
Yes. So this is our conferences in October, where, by the way, Carlos's group HuMind had an event in Fuya, this our same venue last year, and his group is in our area. They're not that far away, so it's all converging. It's wonderful.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you,
Thanks so
Carl.
much, Carl.
Thank you, Tufan. Thank you, Russ. Thank you, everybody,
Thanks,
for
everyone.
joining us.
Thank you.
Love, blessings, wholeness.
It's been a blessing. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
What a blessing.